Welcome to Okashun channel. Today's video is 5 backstories about Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This movie was released in 1984 as Hayao Miyazaki's second full-length animated feature film. Even though a long time has passed since its release, the film continues to be loved by children and adults alike. So, let's take a look. There is a reason why Nausicaa's breasts are so big. It's not because Hayao Miyazaki likes big boobs. So what is the reason? Hayao Miyazaki has said the following. I think the breasts are there to hold those people when they die. When you hold them in your arms, you can die with peace of mind. I think it should be that kind of breasts. To sum it up simply, Hayao Miyazaki seems to think that in the world of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is a harsh environment, by holding the dying person in Nausicaa's arms, they can travel to the afterlife with peace of mind. In order to do so, Nausicaa's breasts must be larger than usual, and this is why he intentionally introduced the large breasts. Nausicaa has two models. The first is Princess Nausicaa, who appears in Bernard Evsland's Encyclopedia of Greek Mythology, as revealed in a conversation between Hayao Miyazaki and producer Isao Takahata. The kind and beautiful Princess Nausicaa saves Odysseus one day. She wants to be his wife, but he himself wants to return to his homeland. When she learns of this, she suppresses her feelings and withdraws from him. When they parted, she said, "Goodbye, stranger. Remember me when you go back to your country." "I saved your life," she murmurs. Both Nausicaa and Princess Nausicaa share a common trait. They never forget to be kind to others. Princess Nausicaa also seems to have been a woman who played the lyre and ran around on the seaside, without falling in love even when she grew up. The other Nausicaa is said to have been based on Princess Mushimazuru, the heroine of the story Princess Mushimazuru in the story of Tsutsumi Chunagon, a collection of stories from the Heian period in Japan. The beautiful and noble princess was an unusual person who never wore makeup or eyebrows. She didn't even like pretty things, but she loved caterpillars. Normally, people would prefer flowers, butterflies and other beautiful life, but the princess had no preconceived notions about nature, and she loved to watch nature with her own eyes and observe the growth of insects. People around her advise her to wear makeup, but for her, nature comes first, and makeup makes her look less natural, so she believes that her true self is the most natural. Her love for bugs and her character that doesn't care about beauty and ugliness, you can feel a glimpse of Nausicaa. By the way, she is drawn on the back cover of the original book. One of the most appealing characteristics of Nausicaa is her kindness and acceptance of all people, animals and plants. However, Hayao Miyazaki says that Nausicaa's greatest characteristic is, above all, she takes responsibility. Even if she has her own thoughts and her own desires, she lives under the oppression of always having to take into account the interests and the fate of the whole tribe, even if it's a small tribe, before she do anything else. In other words, Nausicaa's kindness is not unconditional love, but something that she had to do as the leader of her tribe. The reason why Nausicaa treats everyone with love and affection, but herself is always lonely, may be because she is carrying the responsibility and sorrow alone. Hayao Miyazaki's works are characterized by a worldview that reflects real-life conflicts and the conflict between nature and civilization. In fact, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind also incorporates various metaphors and worldviews linked to reality. When this film was released in 1984, the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was in a state of tension. Against this backdrop, 7 Days of Fire is reminiscent of nuclear war, and the giant warrior that burned the world to the ground is reminiscent of nuclear weapons. In fact, when a nuclear war occurs, the Earth is said to go through an ice age called nuclear winter as ashes and smoke block out sunlight. The toxic jungle, which is uninhabitable by humans, may be a metaphor for the land contaminated by radiation after a nuclear war, the nuclear winter. The reason why Hayao Miyazaki created Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and the setting of the toxic jungle has a lot to do with the mercury pollution that occurred in Japan in 1956. At that time, Minamata Bay in Japan was contaminated with mercury and many people died. It became known as the Sea of Death, and no one fished there anymore. However, a few years later, many fish and shellfish were still living in Minamata Bay. When they examined the mud in the sea, they found that the microorganisms in the sea had evolved on their own and had acquired the ability to purify mercury. Director Hayao Miyazaki, who was shocked by this event, focused on this episode where the polluted Minamata Bay was restored by microorganisms, and came up with the idea of the toxic jungle in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. The world of this film is not just a fantasy, but it is certainly linked to the reality of our planet. Hayao Miyazaki has revealed that he was influenced by a French manga called Arzac, a science fiction fantasy work, when creating Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. The author is Jean Giroux, known by the pen name Mobius. The two are fans of each other's work, and had a joint exhibition in Paris in 2004. It is true that there are similarities in the way the giant imaginary creatures fly around in the sky. That's it for today's video. If you like this video at all, please rate it highly and subscribe to my channel.